louder, better, bigger.
One city.
Seattle, Washington.
One team. One goal.
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl, all the way.
What started in Renton 7 months ago ends 24 hours from now in New Jersey.
I think we're very fortunate to have come together at this time to make this happen.
One city, one team, one goal.
With a legion of 12s behind them, one more win brings a Super Bowl championship to the Seahawks and the city of Seattle. Oh, there you see it, MetLife Stadium in New Jersey.
Less than 24 hours from now, the Seattle Seahawks and Denver Broncos meet in Super Bowl 48. Good evening, everyone. I'm Molly Shen along with Tim Lewis. Thanks for joining our Road to the Championship preview special. We're coming to you tonight from our special Super Bowl studio as we count down to the biggest game of the year and one of the biggest moments in Seattle sports history.
It feels great to say less than 24 hours now, doesn't it?
So happy it's taken so long to get here.
Well, we've got you covered on both coasts, from right here in Seattle to New York and New Jersey, where we're joined by KOMO4's Eric Johnson and sports director Mike Ferreri. Guys, the anticipation has been building for 2 weeks. Now it is finally time to play some football.
Yes, it is finally time. Thank you, Tim and Molly.
This is something that's not predictable.
A wall of mud and debris cuts a path of destruction through rural Snohomish County, leaving even veteran scientists stunned.
This is one of the biggest landslides I've seen, yes.
As search teams work around the clock looking for signs of life, grim reality begins to set in for people whose loved ones are missing.
You know, it's surreal. It's like there's no way anything could ever survive this at all.
It's been more than 48 hours since a giant wall of mud came crumbling down, destroying houses, taking out everything in its path and blocking Highway 530.
Here's what we know right now. At least 14 people are dead, and there are 108 reports of people missing or unaccounted for. Emergency officials stress that's a soft number and likely includes duplicates.
49 structures were destroyed, including 25 homes. Scientists say the debris field is 30 to 40 feet deep in some places. More than 100 emergency responders are scouring the area for victims and survivors, but some had to pull back today because of unstable conditions.
We have Team 4 coverage tonight, from the survivors to the evacuees to families still waiting to hear from their loved ones. Hot coffee with a steamy sideshow.
They're selling not just coffee, they're selling their bodies.
Cops thought they'd put the clamp down on coffee stands peddling and prostitution.
Hi, we're with Channel 4.
But the problem solvers found baristas are still up to their same old tricks.
It's totally frustrating to us.
It's the seedy side of a business you see everywhere. Bikini baristas who serve more than coffee.
Everett thought it had put a stop to a major prostitution ring more than a year ago. But a KOMO4 problem solver's hidden camera investigation discovered that the illicit business at one of the very same locations is very much alive and well.
KOMO4's Tracy Vetter reports that big money makes this a tough crime to knock out.
I heard the gunshot, and then the teacher, the ROTC commander, came in shouting, "Everybody get down."
Chaos on campus.
People were shouting, like, there's a gun, and then
we fell to the floor, and like, it was horrible.
A school shooting sends kids running for cover, police rushing to the scene, and an entire region trying to understand why.
I just want to go home and kind of wrap my head around what happened. You know?
This shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen to our kids and our grandkids and our babies.
The first call for help came in just after 10:30 this morning when a student walked into the cafeteria at Marysville Pilchuck and opened fire.
Here's what we know right now. 2 people are dead, including the shooter, who has been identified as 14-year-old freshman Jalen Freiberg.
A female student is also dead. 4 others are injured, including 3 listed in critical condition.
We have Team 4 coverage tonight covering all angles of this story. We begin, though, with KOMO4's Lindsay Cohen live outside Marysville Pilchuck High School right now. Lindsay?
Good evening, Eric. A number of police agencies remain here on the scene.
The world's most popular search engine proves no match for tech-savvy scammers and pranksters.
I have control over whatever I want to do on Google.
and there's nothing they can do at this point.
Tonight, the flaw leaving the site and anyone who uses it vulnerable to criminals and con artists.
I can make 1,000 fake businesses a week. It is a category or a type of business that hackers and unsavory people will exploit.
Just last week, Google introduced a revamped Google Maps, but apparently the company failed to fix a major weakness in the system.
Tonight, a whistleblower exposes the problem he says Google is ignoring. We're calling it Google map jacking, and it could put you in jeopardy. Como 4 problem solver Matt Markovich explains.
We've come to rely on Google Maps.
After a heart-stopping finish, the Seahawks are headed back to football's biggest stage.
And the Seahawks are going to the Super Bowl.
We're going to New York, baby!
Tonight, die-hard fans are realizing a dream years in the making.
Look at that, right there. Been waiting a long time.
While one player's post-game rant continues to be the talk of the sports world.
Well, I'm the best corner in the game. Don't you ever talk about me.
Hello, everyone. What a game. What a finish.
And what a party. As the Seahawks celebrated on the field, fans went crazy on the streets of Seattle.
So fun. We have Team 4 coverage on the road to the Super Bowl, including Matt Markovich, with fans making travel plans for the East Coast.
Joel Marino is following the firestorm surrounding Richard Sherman's post-game rants.
And Denise Whitaker caught up with the local printer, busy making all those Seahawks championship gear.
But we begin with Como 4 Sports Director Mike Frary. A new reaction today from Coach Pete Carroll. He's got to be happy, Mike.
Oh, yeah, that is for sure. It was an emotional, nail-biting final minute of last night's NFC Championship game, but the Seahawks are still standing. And now, after knocking off their division rival, the 49ers, they are headed for the Super Bowl to match up with the Broncos.
A team for the ages.
The Seahawks are world champs.
The celebration of a lifetime.
A giant display of support from the 12th man.
All we got here is action, boss.
Lombardi comes to the Emerald City as Seattle celebrates the first Super Bowl championship for the Seahawks.
An estimated 700,000 people lined the streets to watch today's victory parade for the Seahawks. That's more than the entire city population.
Fans waiting nearly 38 years for a championship didn't mind waiting several hours in the bitter cold for a glance at their favorite team. We have Team 4 coverage on every angle of today's celebration, including the big party at CenturyLink Field and the big cleanup.
We begin with Como 4's Elisa Jaffe live right where the parade got started. Elisa?
Looking up and I was like, that doesn't look right. I was like, should that helicopter be doing that?
It hit cars, it destroyed trees, caught fire, everything.
It just blew up. I mean, it just instantly. There was nothing could have been done.
We all watch the helicopter. It's still interesting and exciting to us every day, but today was much more horrifying, unfortunately.
Felt like a movie. It still feels like a movie.
For decades, all of us here, and at times you too, have depended on our news helicopter to help deliver breaking news and impressive video from above.
Just after 7:30 this morning, Air 4 became the news. Two members of the Como family, pilot Gary Fitzner and veteran photographer Bill Strothman, were killed when the chopper crashed shortly after taking off from its helipad here at Fisher Plaza.
It's a day of great shock and sadness in our building for our Como family and for the Seattle community. But as always, we're committed to bringing you the news today, as we would any day.
We have Team 4 coverage tonight on the deadly helicopter crash, from the witnesses to the survivors.
We begin with Como 4's Lindsay Cohen and the investigation into what went so horribly wrong. Lindsay?
Yeah, Dan, it'll be 5 days before we have the first pieces of that investigation, up to a year before we have the rest. This is the scene here tonight out on Broad Street, a street still being cleaned, a case without answers, a tough day all around. Sirens and smoke darkened the early morning sky after a crash at the base of the Space Needle. When it cleared, 3 cars on the ground and the tail of a helicopter.
The propeller rolled over and it just boom, right in the middle of the street.
Eyewitnesses say the chopper made an unusual noise after it took off from the helipad atop Fisher Plaza. It rotated, pitched forward, then hit 3 cars on the street. The smoke was so intense, first responders didn't realize at first this was more than just a car crash.
They didn't even know as we arrived on scene that there was a helicopter in the midst of all these car fires, because not only were the cars on fire, but the fuel was going down the street on fire.
The drivers escaped from the cars on fire. 2 are uninjured. 1 has burns to 20% of his body. But some did not survive, including the helicopter pilot Gary Fitzner and photographer Bill Strothman, flying for Como 4 News, doing things they loved and had done for years.
We're looking at everything. We're looking at the environment, the weather, the pilot, the operators in the helicopter, as well as the helicopter itself, as well as the background of all of the above.
The NTSB has taken over the scene as it investigates what caused the crash. They moved the wreckage this afternoon to a hangar in Auburn. A preliminary report could be out as soon as 5 days from now. A full report could take a year. Until then, a community reels from a difficult day.
It didn't seem natural, and of course it wasn't. Boom, it was really an accident. It was tragic. It was very, very tragic.
Well, this, of course, happened around 7:40 this morning. The mayor remarking earlier today, had it been any later, this could have been much worse. Meantime, we can tell you maintenance records on that helicopter currently en route to Seattle, and the street here expected to reopen within the hour. Reporting live in Seattle tonight, I'm Lindsay Cohen, Como 4 News.
Lindsay, thank you. One of the things that will make the NTSB's job both more complicated and easier is how many witnesses saw the helicopter before and as it went down. Como 4's Tracy Vetter talked with some of those witnesses. She's live outside Fisher Plaza with their perspective. Tracy?
At 7:40 this morning, the block around this intersection was busy, filled with cars and pedestrians on their way to work. Many of those pedestrians on their way to Como 4 for work themselves, but having no idea they were about to witness a tragedy in our own family.
What people on the street realized right away is that the helicopter lifting off Fisher Plaza was having problems.
And the tail spun around a little bit. I don't know if it was a full 360, maybe a 180.
The engine sounded a little bit weird. The air, everything sounded a little bit weird.
It all happened very fast. Whatever problem it encountered appeared to be very immediate.
Witnesses say in seconds the helicopter broke apart on the ground, then burst into flames.
It just blew up. I mean, it just instantly. There was nothing could have been done.
Inside Como's newsrooms, people watched in disbelief out windows and off balconies as the river of burning jet fuel rolled down Broad Street, torching cars trapped by the crash.
And there's just a moment where I have to do something. Can we go help them? And then you just see all the flames, and there's nothing you can do.
It's those sounds of the engines of the cars and the gas that's just ripping apart everything, and just literally you see explosion after explosion, and there was a trail of jet fuel.
Then the realization, the crash they'd watched unfold took the lives of part of our Como family. Photographer Bill Strothman and pilot Gary Fitzner worked for Helicopters, Inc., but flew every morning for Como and King.
Now knowing who the photographer was, I worked with him forever.
This is tough for everybody here. We lost colleagues today, so I think that's the most important thing for everybody to remember.
And the NTSB knows how important witnesses can be in a case like this. They plan to talk to as many of them as possible. Reporting live at Fisher Plaza, Tracy Vetter, Como 4 News.
Thank you, Tracy. Today, Como not only lost co-workers, we lost friends.
Como 4's Eric Johnson is here to help our viewers get to know Bill Strothman, who spent nearly 30 years as a photographer in our newsroom. Eric?
Oh, what a day, you guys, what a day. Those of us who got a chance to work with and know Bill Strothman are very lucky indeed. He usually had some whiskers of some kind on his face, an easy smile, and a genuine, gentle passion for the business of exploring hearts and lives through the lens of a camera.
Bill Strothman loves stories and pictures and people, not in that order. For almost 30 years, he carried around a camera and a smile, and he told stories, beautiful stories that he took pride in, and we took pride in them too. He shot these pictures. This is vintage Bill Strothman.
The best.
84th and TMB, affirmative, in Totem Lake.
If Rick Talley answers your call,
okay, no sweat.
You're in luck.
He's the guy who lets you see his heart. I guess that's the way to describe Bill.
He's a great photographer. He's a great storyteller. He feels it in his heart. He sees it in his eyes. He thinks it in his head. And I miss him already. I miss him. I just can't fathom it. I just can't fathom it.
He shot this video Clean, sharp, creative. You only get stuff like this because you love it. Bill was damn good. He roamed the streets and roads and skies of our region with a camera on his shoulder for 28 years. He was our eyes and your eyes. He had a feel. Bill Strothman had a great feel for the business.
Oh, there. Woo! Here it is, Wesley.
Bill, hold on. Unchanged.
I saw a picture of him on Como News this morning with a big smile on his face. And I thought, that's how I remember him. That's the way he was.
Perhaps his greatest compliment to the news business and brotherhood is that he allowed his son Dan to follow in his footsteps as a Como TV videographer.
Yeah, seeing him definitely inspired me to get into it, for sure. And the telling people's stories was definitely one of my main motivators. And I'm not nearly as good as my dad. Like, I never will be, but I still am doing what I love.
Bill liked to talk about his craft, to get into the guts of a story. He loved the give and take of the photographer-reporter relationship. If Bill told you it was good, that it touched a part of him, then you could believe it was good.
When he would do these stories, he was such a kind person, such a great human, that he was able to find the human connection in everything he did.
He was involved in his church. He was involved in his community. He was a man of principle. Everybody knew that. Always with a grin, a twinkle in his eye, something thoughtful to say.
But he liked going around the world with World Vision, with the Lutheran Church, and being in third world countries, helping those who really need help, and his pictures really told the story. And Bill really loved to be out in the world and in the community, and is really going to be missed by all of us.
He leaves behind his wife Nora, his daughter Heidi, his son Dan, and of course his other family here at Como.
My heart is just shredded. Bill was more than a photographer. He was more than a journalist. He was a friend I'd known for 20 plus years. And my heart is just shredded today.
A couple years ago, Bill retired. But when it's in your blood, when you love cameras and stories and people, you can't stay away. And so he didn't. He came back to fly in Air 4 for a little extra cash and a little extra adrenaline. It was like a homecoming every time he worked these last few years. It felt like home.
How do I think Bill wants to be remembered? As a guy who loved what he did, who was passionate not only about journalism, but about his family, about life, as somebody who made a difference, and as somebody who was a friend.
In addition to flying in Air 4 the past few years, Bill worked on some documentaries and started a production company called Glass Mountain Video. Bill's decency and compassion were kind of a constant in the Como universe. He was easy, calm, comfortable, and of course, it goes without saying, we're going to miss him horribly.
A kind man, a good friend, and a great dad.
Yeah,
Thanks,
all
Eric.
those things.
We also felt a close bond with our chopper pilot, Gary Fitzner, and he felt a connection with you, the viewer. And talk about a guy who loved what he did. He loved to fly. Como 4's Mark Miller is live outside Fisher Plaza to tell us more about our colleague and our friend. Mark?
I want to show all of you something happening outside of our studios on Fisher Plaza. Our viewers sharing with us their condolences, sharing with us this grief, dropping off flowers and cards. This one addressed to Gary, and we just had this. This is from a pilot who graduated from the same flight school as Gary. You know, I can tell you that listening to a few people that know him best, you'll get a sense that you knew him too. He was devoted to three things: flying, building airplanes, and his family.
So proud to be a pilot, he brought his mom and dad down to see where he works. And his entire family was extremely proud of him.
We just can't believe he's gone.
3 of Gary's 6 siblings want to share with you what kind of a man he was. First and foremost, devoted to his wife and 2 grown boys, close to the entire clan.
To me, he was a very dear brother, and he just always tried to take care of us.
Gary Fitzner put himself through flight school, became an instructor pilot, a guy you trust to take you up. We all did, and admired his devotion to gathering the day's news for all of you.
When he tried to do his best reporting for people and giving them pictures and trying to help people that were watching the news every morning.
And after flying in the morning, Gary would go to his full-time job as a composites expert, building planes for Boeing.
He had that same passion.
A colleague and close friend described first learning there'd been a crash.
I said, my God. And I actually sent Gary a text message. Gary, I heard there was an accident. Are you okay? And we know the answer.
While the grief is overwhelming, Gary's brother told me it is a small consolation to know Gary was able to live his dream of soaring through the sky.
He really did love to fly, and he did something that, if you're going to go, it's always best to do it what you love the most.
Today I talked to pilots across the country. I talked to other news photographers. All of them say that Gary was an incredibly talented pilot, dedicated to safety. His family says that he was going to celebrate his 60th birthday this December. They were planning the big 6-0 party. Gary, we all love you, and we'll miss you. Back to you.
Mark, thank you very much. The injured driver who was trapped in his burning car has been upgraded to serious condition. 38-year-old Richard Newman got out of the vehicle on his own, but it took 90 seconds from the time the fire started. When he emerged, his clothes were on fire. A security guard at Fisher Plaza tackled him to put out the flames. Newman suffered second and third degree burns on 20% of his body. He's in the intensive care unit at Harborview Medical Center. We'll hear from the security guard who helped save his life. That's coming up at 6:30.
Tonight, our hearts ache for the families of Gary Fitzner and Bill Strothman, and our prayers go to the family of the man in his car who was burned, Richard Newman. We wish him so well. We didn't know him, but we sure hope things turn out well for him. 4 people in their cars had a harrowing front row seat to the crash. They knew the chopper was in trouble, but only one of those 4 vehicles had time to move out of the way. KOMO4's Michelle Esteban has more on their stories tonight. Michelle?
Well, Dan, they saw the chopper coming right at them, and one of the witnesses told me he could actually see the pilot in the chopper struggling, and he's confident that he was trying to get the chopper across the street into the lawn at the Seattle Center, but as we all sadly know, he just couldn't.
Some of us are lucky to be alive today.
Pete Williams said he'll never forget the images that led up to this final moment. He saw everything from his driver's seat, just 4 car lengths back from where the chopper crash landed.
Debris was flying. A piece of it hit my car. I saw it coming, so my carpool partner and I both ducked down below the dashboard, and then it glanced off my car.
The Washington State Ferry captain was just 1 block from work when his carpool buddy and coworker, Donna Wharton, first noticed trouble.
Road, and I was looking up and I was like, that doesn't look right. I was like, should that helicopter be doing that? I was like, something looks off. And then he's like, no, it shouldn't. And then right then it just came down and it hit.
Williams said the chopper nosedived off our rooftop launch pad. He could see the pilot struggling to correct it.
It was unstable. It was pitching and going up and down.
It was like its tail wobbled, so it did like a couple tail spins, and then the nose was coming down a little bit more, and then it just swooped down and hit.
Pete slammed on his brakes to back up. He and Donna ran to a woman whose car was damaged by the debris and on fire. She blamed herself for making a coffee run, insisting normally she wouldn't have been at this spot. On the other side of the crash site, a driver, likely uncertain of what happened behind her, bolts from her car and then runs back to drive to a safer spot. Dozens of witnesses watched in horror as a man on fire runs for cover. Flames from the crash charred every inch of his pickup.
His jacket's on flames, he's on fire, he's trying to get it out, he's rolling on the floor, and then I see firemen helping him get it out.
Pete Williams speaks for so many that it's worth repeating.
Some of us are lucky to be alive today.
Lucky indeed. In fact, the woman who you saw running from the SUV, the chopper, fell right behind her vehicle. On Facebook today, she expressed just how thankful she is that someone was looking out for her. We are thankful too. Back to you.
Thank you, Michelle. The helicopter in today's accident was a Eurocopter AS-350 owned by Helicopters Incorporated out of St. Louis. The model is used by several television stations all over the country. The manufacturer also recommends it for hospitals and police departments. Here's a picture of the chopper that crashed today. Como and King have a joint agreement to lease it from Helicopters Incorporated. This is not the helicopter you normally see us use. Helicopters Incorporated is outfitting that one with a new camera, and we were using this one in the interim.
City leaders have also been sharing their condolences on the tragic crash this morning. We heard kind words from Seattle Fire Chief Gregory Dean and Police Chief Harry Bailey, as well as Mayor Ed Murray.
On behalf of Seattle, I want to express my deepest condolence to the families of both the victims and to all their colleagues at Como. Our thoughts and prayers are with you during this incredible, difficult moment.
All three men also stopped by the Como 4 studios this morning to share their condolences to us and the victims' families as well. Governor Jay Inslee released this statement about the crash. This morning, 2 members of the Como News family were killed in a tragic crash. Trudy and I send our condolences to their families and to the men and women at Como who, despite the personal impacts of this tragedy, have been reporting on this loss with impressive professionalism and grace. Our hearts go out to you.